Scary telling. My last year as a human began when Mom and I moved back to Grandpa's farm. This farm is unlike any I've seen before. It's a massive place cradled in a valley surrounded by steep volcanic mountains. He grows barley, hops, hazelnuts, and apples. If that weren't enough, wild berries and apricots grow there too. It's a thriving place, and all the local critters know it. Every room of the manor house has a bear rug. Maintaining the property is a full-time job for each of Mom's 6 older siblings. I think there were 6. Since the whole family lives up in the main manor house, Mom and I stay in an aging houseboat on Blowout Lake, several yards behind the kitchen gardens. The outside of the houseboat has seen better days, but inside? Inside, my mom's handcrafted mosaic floors still shine bright with scenes of vibrant sea life. It's creative and bohemian, just like her, but Grandpa's new wife hates it. Grandpa's wife is a very pretty woman, but it only took me about an hour to realize she has nothing nice to say about anyone, especially my mom. What on earth is Grandpa thinking, letting that snob hang around here? I hope I'll never forget the way my mom sat with me on the dock with her feet in the water. I hope I'll never forget the smell of all her colorful tattoos slathered in extra banana coconut sunscreen. I hope I'll never forget the way she just shrug and quietly ignore the mean things Grandpa's wife would say about her. I know I won't be me much longer, but still, I hope those memories will stay. I just wish I could remember my mom's name. It didn't take me long to notice there's something strange about the water in Blowout Lake. Fish don't swim in it. Farm animals won't drink from it. Blowout Lake feels like water should, but something in my spine shrinks when I touch it. My guts swear it's not water at all. My body used to beg me not to drink it. Blowout Lake began as a large crater behind my grandpa's farmhouse. The faded newspaper articles in dusty frames on the houseboat walls claim Blowout Lake appeared after a meteor crashed there in the 1950s. Eventually, when my grandpa was old enough to take over the family farm, he built the dock and installed the houseboat. There are rumors among the people in town that the meteor is still lying at the bottom, just lying there, worth millions, but they're wrong. I hope they never find out how wrong they are. I just wish I could remember their names. Most lakes around here are crystal clear. Most lakes around here have a sharply visible bottom, despite being well over 100 feet deep in many places. Blowout Lake is pretty wide, but it's only about 50 feet deep. The entire surface of the water is like a metallic mirror, which reflects the sky beautifully, but you can't see the bottom at all. I used to pretend our houseboat wasn't on a lake but floating in the clouds instead. We had our own fresh start island in the sky. We lived in a rusty airship of unlimited possibilities. I enjoyed living within such daydreams. But that was before, I think. Yes. That was before I went beneath. One of the drawbacks of living in a rickety old houseboat is maintenance. Despite my recent evolution, I don't understand how the engineering behind it all works, but Grandpa spent a whole week teaching me how to scuba safely in the cold freshwater to reach the various valves and such beneath the houseboat. At first, I despised the panic that comes from only inhaling through the mouthpiece of the scuba gear. It's horrible. How do mouth breathers on the surface stand it? I used to wonder if mouth breathers are dumber and meaner than the rest of us because they're not getting enough oxygen to their brains, but now I can't remember meeting any. I'm so glad I don't need scuba gear to breathe down here anymore. Once I got used to the newness of scuba gear, though, I think I felt like I had a new superpower. I couldn't wait to explore this new world beneath our houseboat. I know I had to see this meteor at the bottom of Blowout Lake for myself. I don't remember exactly when my grandpa disappeared, but it wasn't long after. I was almost to the bottom before it happened. A tingling began at the tip of my toes, shivering its way toward my skull. At first, I thought I must have a malfunctioning oxygen tank or valve or something, but I was wrong. I was healing, improving, evolving. The thing at the bottom of Blowout Lake is not a meteor, but it is round. It is metallic. And its intelligence is powerfully hungry for expansion. Shimmering scales of some kind of technology are slowly spreading from this thing, coating the volcanic rocks on the lake bottom with hungry sentience. I used to wonder how long Grandpa has been obeying its orders, but now it's my turn to obey. The errands it assigns me are different every day, but I do feel appreciated. I just wish it would have stuck to devouring volcanic rocks for fuel. Lately, it's asking for blood, and my errands are not only harder to complete, but harder to hide. Despite my recent evolution, I don't understand how the engineering behind it all works. All I know is it needs me for its tech to grow. Every time I bring it a meal, it grows a bit larger, and I change a bit faster. I have to cover my arms and throat with thick makeup now to hide the silvery scales of technology growing across my skin. Sometimes, to get through particularly bloody errands, I try to dream. Sometimes, I dream of my early days, learning to walk in a 77th floor penthouse in the city. Sometimes, I dream of my earliest days when I was surrounded by bricks and metal and concrete and glass. Sometimes, I pretend I'll grow to be the type of person who wears pricey business attire and $500 haircuts. I just wish I could remember my name. It was the summer of my 15th birthday when I first heard about the haunted lake. My friends and I were always looking for something to do, so when we heard the rumors of a cursed lake nearby, we couldn't resist the temptation to investigate. The lake was hidden away in a secluded part of the forest, and getting there was a challenge. We had to walk for miles, and the terrain was rough. But the closer we got, the more we could feel a sense of dread creeping up on us. When we arrived, we were greeted by an eerie silence. The water was murky and still, and the air was thick with a musty smell. It was as if the lake had been abandoned for years. We decided to set up camp nearby and explore the area during the day. As the sun began to set, we huddled around the campfire, telling each other spooky stories to pass the time. That's when we heard a faint whispering coming from the direction of the lake. We all froze, unsure of what to do. But our curiosity got the best of us, and we decided to investigate. As we approached the lake, the whispers grew louder, and we could make out the faint outline of a figure in the water. It was as if the lake itself was alive, and it was calling out to us. Without thinking, we waded into the water, and that's when the nightmare began. The water was freezing cold, and as we swam deeper, we realized that we were not alone. Strange creatures began to appear out of the murky depths, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. They had long, slender fingers and teeth as sharp as knives. They circled us, watching us with a hunger that made our skin crawl. We tried to swim back to shore, but the creatures were too fast. They grabbed hold of us, dragging us down into the depths of the lake. As we struggled to free ourselves, we saw the bodies of other victims trapped in the grasp of the creatures. It was clear that we were not the first to fall prey to the haunted lake. But we refused to give up without a fight. We used whatever we could find to fend off the creatures, and eventually, we managed to break free. We swam back to shore, gasping for air, and collapsed on the beach. It was then that we noticed the strange symbols etched into the rocks around us, symbols that we recognized from the stories we had heard about the cursed lake. We had uncovered the terrifying secrets of the haunted lake, and we knew that we would never be the same again. The memory of that night still haunts me to this day, and I want others to stay far away from that cursed place. I woke up in a mental hospital room, the cold seeping through the thin blanket and into my bones. As I looked around the room, I noticed that the only light source was a dim bulb hanging from the ceiling. The silence in the room was overwhelming, the kind of silence that makes you feel like you're not alone, like something or someone is watching you. And then I saw him, standing in the corner of the room. He was a tall man, with long hair and a long coat that hung off his bony frame. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his eyes on me, piercing through the darkness. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat felt like it was closing up, suffocating me. I struggled to sit up, but my body wouldn't respond. The man in the corner just stood there, watching me with his dark, unseeing eyes. His presence was suffocating, his aura oozing with malevolence. I tried to close my eyes and convince myself that it was all just a dream, but when I opened them again, he was still there. I don't know how long I lay there, staring at the man in the corner. It could have been minutes, hours, or days. Time had lost all meaning in that room. The only thing that mattered was the man and his presence. And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, he was gone. The room was plunged into complete darkness, the only sound being my ragged breaths. But the silence was even worse now, without the man's ominous presence. I must have passed out, because the next thing I remember was waking up to the sound of footsteps outside the door. The door creaked open, and a nurse walked in. She looked surprised to see me awake, but quickly composed herself. "Good morning," she said, a hint of unease in her voice. "How are you feeling?" I tried to answer, but my voice was hoarse from screaming. The nurse looked at me with concern, and then her gaze flickered to the corner of the room. "What's wrong?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "Nothing," she said quickly, but I could tell she was lying. "Just a momentary lapse. Everything's fine now." But I knew it wasn't fine. The man in the corner had been real, and he had been there for a reason. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still watching me, even though I couldn't see him. Days turned into weeks, and I remained in that hospital room, haunted by the memory of the man in the corner. I tried to convince myself that it had all been a hallucination, a side effect of the medication, but I knew the truth. And then, one day, the door to my room opened again, and a different nurse walked in. She looked at me with pity in her eyes, and then whispered the words that would change my life forever. "The man in the corner, he was a patient here once. He died in this very room, and his spirit never left." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The man in the corner had been real all along, and he was never going to let me go. I woke up with a start, sweat pouring down my face. The nightmare had been so vivid, so real. I couldn't shake off the feeling that it had actually happened. But as I looked around, I realized that I wasn't in my bedroom. I was naked, lying on a sandy beach, with no recollection of how I got there or where I was. The sun was setting, casting an orange hue across the sky. I stood up, feeling dizzy and disoriented. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew that I had to find some clothes and figure out where I was. As I began to walk towards the water, I heard someone calling my name. I turned around to see two women approaching me, both holding weapons. I froze, not knowing what to do. They told me that they would kill me if I didn't tell them everything about my life, but first, they wanted me to show them something interesting about myself. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I knew that I needed to stay alive. I tried to calm myself down and think clearly. I needed to find out more about these women and their intentions. They seemed to know who I was, but I had no memory of them. I asked them where I was and how I got there, but they remained silent. As we walked, I noticed that the beach was deserted, with no signs of civilization anywhere. I wondered how long I had been there and if anyone was looking for me. The women continued to question me, asking me about my family, my job, and my interests. I answered their questions, hoping to gain their trust and find a way out of this situation. Suddenly, I remembered something interesting about myself. I had always been able to hold my breath for a long time underwater. Without thinking, I dove into the water and swam as far as I could. When I resurfaced, the women were nowhere to be seen. I swam back to the shore, hoping that they had left me alone. But as I reached the beach, I saw them standing there, waiting for me. They told me that I had passed their test and that they would let me go. But before I left, they handed me a piece of paper with an address on it. They told me that if I ever wanted to know more about myself, I should go there. With that, they vanished into the darkness, leaving me standing there, naked and confused. I didn't know what to make of this experience, but I knew that I needed to find out more. I walked along the beach, feeling the sand between my toes, and wondered what other secrets lay hidden in my memory. The nightmare that had started all of this seemed like a distant memory now. But I knew that it had changed me forever. As I walked, I realized that I was not alone. The beach was filled with people, all of them staring at me with empty eyes. I tried to run, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. And then I woke up, in my bed, drenched in sweat. It had all been a dream. Or had it? The piece of paper with the address was lying next to me, as real as the nightmare that had led me there. I knew that I had to find out more. I got dressed and set out on a journey to discover the truth about myself and the mysterious women who had tested me on Nightmare Beach. I had always known that my daughter was special to me, but it wasn't until I was on my deathbed that I realized just how much she meant to me. As I lay there, barely able to breathe, my mind began to wander to all the moments we had shared together, the laughter, the tears, the fights, and the hugs. But as I closed my eyes for what I thought would be the final time, I felt a sudden chill in the air. When I opened my eyes, I saw her standing there, looking at me with her big brown eyes and a smile on her face. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, but as I reached out to touch her, I felt her warmth in my hand. It was then that she spoke to me. "Daddy, I'm here for you," she said softly. "I know you're scared, but you don't have to be. I'm with you, and I always will be." As I looked into her eyes, I knew that she was telling the truth. I felt a sense of calm wash over me, and for the first time in a long time, I was at peace. But as the hours passed, I realized that something was wrong. My daughter wasn't there to comfort me. Instead, she was there to warn me. She told me of the ghostly visitors who had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. They were the spirits of those who had died in the hospital, trapped in this world between worlds, unable to move on. As she spoke, I could feel their presence all around me, watching me, waiting for their chance to take me to the other side. But my daughter wouldn't let that happen. She stood by my side, shielding me from their malevolent gaze. And then, Just when I thought it was all over, she spoke again. "Daddy, it's time to go now," she said softly. "But remember, I'm always with you." As I took my final breath, I felt her hand in mine once more. And then, just like that, she was gone. But as I looked around the room, I knew that I wasn't alone. The ghostly visitors were gone, and in their place was a sense of peace and tranquility that I had never felt before. In that moment, I knew that my daughter had been right. She was always with me, watching over me, and protecting me from the things that go bump in the night. And even though I was gone, I knew that her love would live on forever, guiding me to the other side and beyond.